遊ばないか壊したいんだ衝動のまんま闇を照らす黒い太陽理由な
Alright, so before we even start off, there's going to be time codes which are showing now, and they'll be in the description and in the comments, so if you want to skip around, maybe you just want to see his strength and abilities, maybe you just want to hear about his personality or something, you can just click around there and it will take you to where you want to go. But to start off with, you know, as you can see everywhere, I'm going to be starting off by talking about his personality, I guess. He is, actually before I even start off that, I should just say in the intro that he is, of course, one of the 3 great Magi, so of course that means he has limitless raw at his disposal. If he uses it right, of course, you know, because as we saw in his first introduction arc in the Balbat arc, he's not exactly overpowered, but over time, he grows. It's kind of like parallels with Aladdin. As Aladdin gets stronger, he also gets stronger and learns to control his power. Now, of course, this comes through training, and by the end of the series, he's incredibly powerful. But even before then, even before the 2-year time skip, he was still very powerful by the end of that, when we saw him go up against Aladdin. Anyway, I just wanted to just state, first of all, the most obvious, one of the 3 great Magi, and, you know, it's in the title, just gotta get that out of the way. So, let's start off with his personality. He is a very spoilt, selfish, arrogant person, and I would not say he's an evil person. Actually, he's an evil person. I don't know why I just said that. He kills innocent people, he has no remorse for anything, of any of his actions when he kills people. He has no care for what other people think. His actions are evil, but what I'm trying to say is that he's an example of someone that is not born evil. He was turned evil from birth. It is not his fault that he is evil. Now, to get into that, I will get into that with his history, but I'll explain a bit of it now, because as you can see, there's mine history. Now, the reason he is such an, I guess, bad character, bad person, I don't even have to put asterisks on that. He really is. The reason he is so is because of his upbringing with Althaman. As when he was born, and Ren Gyokogen found out that, well, Adba really, found out that he is a Magi and he is in this village, she slaughtered the entire village, his parents included, and they took him in as a child and they raised him. And being raised of Althaman, well, the evil Althaman, you can see how that's not really good, you know, and it's not going to make you the best person, to say the least. So, of course, he ended up turning out how he did. Of course, not his fault that he was abducted by these people, but it doesn't excuse his actions, but that is why he is who he is. He's also very spoiled, because when we see him with Alibaba when they're traveling in the Dark Continent, and he can't use his magic, you can see he's very, very spoiled, you know, like he just wants everything to be done for him, he wants clean stuff, he wants like servants to bring him stuff. Clearly, as a child, you know, being the Magi, Althaman spoiled him quite a bit. And he's also very, very arrogant in his abilities, which we see when he's talking down to Aladdin, when he's, both times, like every time he's met Aladdin, he's talked down to them. He's talked down to Sinbad. I mean, Sinbad is Sinbad, and he's looked down and talked down upon him. And in the Kou Empire, he's just quite, let's say he has a huge head, very big ego. He also seems like a wild card, in my opinion. You never really know who he's going to side with. I mean, if you, let's say you watched season 1 and 2, and you saw Hakuryu, and you thought, when Hakuryu was good, you thought, oh, Hakuryu and Judal, they're never going to team up, right? That's never going to happen. And suddenly they're like the best of, well, not best of friends, but they're the partners. He is very odd, because he's not loyal to Althaman, that's the thing. He knows, he hates them for what they did for his past. Because even when Aladdin uses Solomon's wisdom in the Balbat arc and shows him his past, he's clearly upset. He's the type of person who doesn't let his past interfere with the present or the future. He lives his life now and does what he wants to, you know. He's living it to the fullest. As we see in the final arc when he's in Sinbad's first trial, he says, I'm just living life to the fullest. I'm not full of regrets. I'm just doing what I want to do. You know, it's just his personality. He's I would argue he's one of the freest characters in all of Magi, like free flowing. It's incredible. I mean, he just does what he wants to. Really, he's not aligned. He is aligned with people, but it just fluctuates so easily because he just, as I said, does what he wants to do. Now, obviously, he betrays Althaman because remember when him and Hakuryu just killed. Well, they didn't kill Aruba, but they took her out for that moment. He's betrayed pretty much everyone he's been with beside, I guess, Hakuryu. He never really betrayed him, and he never really betrayed Alibaba. Now with Hakuryu, I guess I could get into that with his relationships later on, but they do have quite a not odd, but it's a very strange relationship. I would have never expected them when I was first watching it, that those two would have linked up, teamed up. You remember when Hakuryu tried to take on Aruba and she just low diffs him, pushes him away like a child. And then Judal does, he goes to talk to him, and they kind of have that little team up. And I mean, listen, given, Aruba did resurrect because it's Aruba, she can't really die. But the fact that they actually beat her is insane. I mean, obviously it wasn't like a 2-on-1 clean fight. They used a lot of strategy, but strategy is part of the fight. The fact that those two beat her, I think is like, you have to understand, Aruba is like as strong as several metal vessel. If you got like 10 metal vessel users and you tried to take on Aruba, I'm saying Aruba would just annihilate them. And they actually beat her. Given that there's a Magi and there's a metal vessel user who has 2, still they were at a huge disadvantage. I'm quite shocked even to this day, like just thinking about it, that they beat him. Anyway, now I'm going into too deep with his history. I'll get into all this with his plot and history, but for now that's his personality. That's why he works the way he works. So he first appears in the dungeon arc when Alibaba gets his metal vessel. He doesn't really do anything. He's just there. I guess that's his introduction, but he's just kind of like, that mysterious anime character in the background who's really cool and is going to be relevant later on. But he turned out to be very relevant, but he was that guy. And in the Koga arc, he did make an appearance, but he didn't do much either. He actually didn't do anything. I think he had like a scene or two, which was kind of like a banter scene, but that was all. Now we really get into it at the Balbad arc. Now at first, where we meet him, we still don't know how strong he really is. He's actually quite weak compared to how strong he becomes later on. Now, during this arc, he's kind of like, I wouldn't say he's the main antagonist, but at some point he does become like the main villain. So, we actually see him talking to Hakuryu at this time as well, urging Hakuryu to go capture a dungeon, which is, I guess it's really, really foreshadowed at all, like at the very, very start, that those two did have a relationship, and it's kind of like foreshadowing in a way. It's very small, but it's still like those two were gonna team up. They did. It's just interesting how they were talking to each other to begin with. It's very interesting. Just a quick thing, I just saw, that was actually the Koga arc, that was not the Balbad arc. So yeah, he does kind of make a cool appearance in the Koga arc, but that's it. He just, a scene or two, that's that. So at first we meet him, and Sinbad sees him and he's like, oh damn, it's the Magi of the Kou Empire. Now, he sees him as a threat. He's like, oh god damn, this guy is here. I think obviously especially at this point, Sinbad could have taken him, but remember, Sinbad did not have any of his metal vessels, so he wasn't useless, but he was substantially weak because he didn't have anything to fight with. Now, later on in the arc, we do see him confront Sinbad, and Sinbad confronts him, and he asks him, what are you doing here? What's your purpose for being here? And this is when we truly get into the twisted nature of, as I almost said Hakuryu, of Judal. Now, he says he has no care about what happens to this country or what happens in it. All he cares about is war. Now, when they meet, well, by they, I mean Aladdin and Judal meet, Sinbad says, oh, this is a Magi, Judal can't believe it. He says Magi is supposed to be amazing people. And he puts on like a fake smile, because Judal is actually a great actor, because of his upbringing, of course, and his horrible backstory. Tragic past, same thing. Anyway, he goes to shake in his hand with a fake smile. Aladdin goes to shake it, and he just socks Aladdin in the face. Now he says, so who's your king vessel? Who's your, king vessel? Yeah, exactly. And Aladdin doesn't respond, so he looks around and he sees that it's Alibaba. Well, I guess that's what his assumption is, and it turned out to be true, that was his king vessel. And he goes to attack Alibaba, but of course Aladdin is not going to have that, and Aladdin gets ready to fight. Of course, at this time, Aladdin really didn't know how to use his magic. Actually, he couldn't really use it at all. I think he could use basic heat magic, but he relied on Ugo in fights. Quite the fight breaks out. We see a couple of his abilities. We see he's a specialist in ice magic, and eventually Ugo is kind of giving him the beats, but he's also attacking Ugo. Aladdin asks why he's doing this, and he says, I don't even remember why this all started. I just want to fight. That just shows his personality. He really is just a wild card. He just wants to do what he wants to do, and I guess that's fighting. Now, of course, we know Ugo, however you want to say his name, is actually a Magi himself, and is actually the guardian spirit of the sacred palace. He is quite the guy. So even with just being hands, when he gets angry that Aladdin is getting beat up, so he just boxes Judal and just knocks him out. Seriously, just gives him the beating. Of course, Judal at this time is quite weak. He hasn't fought many opponents who are strong. At least, obviously, from this battle, he was not that strong. So Ugo, was even just being arms, just unloaded on Judal, which was kind of nice to see because he did punch Aladdin, and it was nice to see him getting crushed. Ugo just grabbed his bow and squished it right there. Eventually, he regains consciousness. He takes control of Qasim when he turns into a black djinn, and he kind of uses that to attack everyone. Aladdin eventually defeats him by using Solomon's wisdom. He's not exactly defeated, but it puts him into an enraged state, a state where he's not mentally stable. Clearly his past is affecting him quite a lot, being shown it all. Alibaba uses this chance to return Qasim back to normal, and they kind of defeat Judal. Not really, he's teleported back to Al-Daman, because obviously they don't want him being hurt anymore, or being killed. Now, we get into, in the next arc, the arc where the black metal vessel users attack Shindra. We get probably at least in the anime, one of the best scenes of Judal, I think. It's definitely up there. Arguably, in the anime, I think it's actually the best we have. In the manga, probably not. There are better scenes. But we see him talking to Sinbad before the invasion. He breaks down Yamu's barrier that covers the whole country, and then he goes to talk to Sinbad. Now, he gets all emotional. He starts crying, saying, I'm a victim of Al-Thaman as well. Aladdin showed him his past. He realized what Al-Thaman did and killed his parents. He just starts crying uncontrollably, falls to the ground. He's hiding his face. Sinbad feels sympathy, of course, empathy for him. So Sinbad goes to, I guess, comfort him or something. And then Judal shows his face and he's laughing. He says that everything he said was true. It wasn't a lie, but he didn't care about the past. And the reason he did that was I don't know, I guess it was an act to make fun of Sinbad, I guess. He says, Sinbad, I guess you're a really good person after all. You're a great person. Oh, not a great person, but a good person. And he says that he doesn't care about the past. He just wants to do as he pleases in the present. Which obviously shows, like I said, in his personality. That's the type of person he is. But of course, that doesn't mean he doesn't hold a grudge against Al-Thaman. We know he still does, but he's still with them at this point. Obviously, we know he's plotting to destroy Adaba and them in the background, but he does care, but I guess it's hidden deeper inside. Now, it's actually at this moment, I don't know if I should talk about it, but we learn a huge amount of information about the Magi world with this conversation. It's crazy how much we learn in this short period of time. So obviously we know that 3 Magi exist, but we learn that Aladdin is a 4th Magi. I'm not too sure if we already knew that, but a 4th Magi who shouldn't exist, and he has special powers. We also learn that one of the Magi is a wanderer, we eventually know to be Yunnan, and that there's an old hag in the Rem Empire, which we know is that girl. Well, woman, I guess. She's 200 years old or something. Anyway, we also learn that there are 5 metal vessel users in the Kou Empire, and that the leader of them all, well, not the leader since he's not the emperor, but the oldest son who ends up turning into the leader, Kyoen Ren is... Oh, he says he can take on Sinbad. I don't think he could. Maybe it could go both ways, but he said in terms of strength, he could take on Sinbad. He's up there. He also comments on how, oh, it would be really fun to team up with Sinbad to conquer the world together, but maybe it's more fun to actually kill or fight such a strong person like Sinbad. So obviously it goes to show that he is like a Kenpachi from Bleach type of character, or a Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter, in the aspect that he just really wants a good fight. He doesn't care about anything else. Now, actually, I actually forgot about this, his part of his personality, or I never knew this before doing all this research. But man, this guy really just wants to fight. I really didn't know he enjoyed fighting this much, but really, he seems like the guy he just cared. I knew he cared about chaos, but I didn't know he wants and enjoys fighting this much, which is pretty interesting. I took him for that character, but I didn't take it for the fact that he'd enjoy it so much and that it's his primary goal for all of the actions that he's done so thus far of what I've talked about. All of it has just been for enjoyment and fighting. Now he does also meet with Kyo and Ren afterwards. We see some banter between them. He does quite a bit after, but I guess for this arc that's all it really is. Then we focus on the generals of Syndra, taking on the Dark Metal Vessel user. Now, next we get the World Exploration arc, where he has a very short scene, but a very, 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 very important scene right here. So, a lot of varies, and for a good reason. So he talks to Hakuryu, because the Emperor just died. Oh wow, he died. We know that it was Arba. I don't know if it was ever confirmed that Arba was the one who killed the Emperor, but it is either it was confirmed. I don't remember if she exactly said it, but it is pretty obvious that she did to become the Empress. Now, Judal actually, he's walking with Kyo and Ren, and he sees Hakuryu, and he says, "Oh, there's a well, he thinks there's a change in the way he looks in his eye. He looks different." So he talks to him, and Hakuryu doesn't want any of it. He says, "Oh, Judal, you're just a pawn of Gyokyogen Ren." And then Judal actually replies by saying, "So are you, but I can see you become much stronger." One thing leads to another, and Gyokyogen Ren appears. She absolutely baby shakes Hakuryu, completely, easily just pushes him off like he's nothing, mocks him and walks away. Judal watches the whole thing because this all is happening at one time. And Judal says, he walks up to him and whispers, "Hey, if you want to change destiny, me and you, let's do this. We can change destiny." Kind of in an evil way, but it is what it is. And this is the beginning of their partnership, because we can see Hakuryu is turning to the dark side of the Raw, to the Black Raw, and Hakuryu is pushing him over. Especially with that encounter with Ren, I imagine Hakuryu just wants power to kill her. He has a very minor role in the Magnostad arc, where he sees Aladdin use Solomon's wisdom, and he's like, "Oh damn, that's the power that changed my life." Him and Hakuryu are kind of doing shady business. Judal takes in all of the Black Raw here, and it's stated that only a Magi who's fallen into depravity can do this. So he gets a big power up here, and then they leave because they finish their business. During the Armatoran arc, he was secretly listening to the whole conversation, and he says that it was all stupidly boring, and there was no point in this. He says that as a Magi, his answer is he wants to see everyone fight it out, and the winner inherits the kingdom, the king, everything. That's his answer as a Magi. He also states to Aladdin that you've gotten a lot stronger, clearly, which Aladdin also says to him, "Yeah, you have too." Which at this point they've both grown not even quite, they've grown a huge amount from when they first met during the Velvet arc. And he also shows off his new power, the third eye power that he has. He shows it off here as well to everyone there. Also, crazy thing, he announces that him and Hakuryu had killed Gyokyogen Ren, Arba. Which, it's just insane. He just says that. And then after this, of course, we get the flashback arc of what happened, what led up to that and the actual fight. Now, at the start of the Kou Empire arc, we already see Hakuryu as king. He's got the two generals there who, tell the Magi, Judal, to not leave the king's side. You know, quite a lot has happened, so we actually get a flashback of Judal and Hakuryu going to Belial's dungeon to capture it, and Judal states that this is a very special dungeon for some reason, and that the ruh has the same colour or essence or feeling, something along those lines, of Zagan. And they also have a little tiny argument about what they're seeing in the distance, because they both see different things. This is actually because of Belial's ability. He, in this vision that Judal has during this time, he sees, he's with Aladdin, and he's watching his village get burned down. And Aladdin says, you should cut ties with Althaman, and he's like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I cannot forgive them. He's quite upset with Althaman at this point. Now, right here, they both shatter their illusions, Judal and Hakuryu, that they see, and Judal is actually, he shouts at Hakuryu saying, what do you want to do? What's your answer to all this? How do you want to live? And Hakuryu slices up the illusion of Morgiana and his sister, which is enough for Judal. And then they descend to take on Belial once the illusion's dispelled. Belial says, I'm not going to submit to you guys so easily, because these guys are clearly evil with their black ruh. And then at this moment, Judal awakens his third eye, which Belial actually states it has a similar feeling to... a feeling, or I would say the ruh, but Belial says the feeling. I'm thinking more of the ruh. It's similar to the Ilhal, that thing, in the flashback of the Al-Mansuran arc. I guess not ruh, because did ruh exist at the time? Yeah, it did actually, just no one could see it. But he stated that the third eye felt like that. Now eventually they go and fight Arba. Now this is the craziest fight. I would actually put it in my top 5 or 3 fights in the entire series. It's, by some crazy methods, by cancelling out all the Mahu magic in the area, and the Ruh. It is just crazy. I know I'm describing it poorly, but they use some crazy tactics and strategy, and eventually take down Arba. Yes, Arba, the strongest being at this point, by far the strongest person. Sorry, not being, but person we had seen. I mean, I guess we'd seen Solomon in the flashback. I'd actually say Solomon was stronger back then, but she's currently the strongest person alive, and they actually kill her. And then he states how they have to try and kill their real bodies. Now, after this, Hakuryu uses his power of Zagan combined with Belial to, brainwash all the soldiers. Quite a lot of stuff happened here. And in the end, Ali Baba and Aladdin take on Hakuryu and Judal. Now, the fight goes on, a lot of emotional stuff happening. So Aladdin actually is forced to kind of push Judal into space. Which, crazy, that's just insane. He pushes him off into space, he just keeps going in the distance, and Judal is protected in his Borg, of course, and I'm guessing his Borg can supply him with oxygen or something. Maybe obviously the physics in that world work completely differently than in our world, but still, he is fine in his Borg, and eventually he lands somewhere. Now, in this land, he meets a creature, and he's like, oh damn, this is a creature. Saying it looked like a dungeon beast. Now he tries to hit it with lightning, and barely any magic appears. Absolutely no magic. So it's the same way as in when Aladdin had that device put into his arm and he couldn't use his Ruh, and he actually had to train with magic from the ground up like a normal person. It was the same with Judal. I mean, he's never been without limitless Ruh, and now he's experiencing not having it, so it's kind of like a training moment, but at the same time, this is not the time since it's life or death. Now he's saved by a thing, like a stickman thing, which ends up being Alibaba. Now they actually have quite a funny relationship because you can't see Alibaba's expressions, and now he really rips into Alibaba, seriously calling him naive, weak, saying no one would be waiting for him when he got back, so what's the point of trying to come back to the real world? And Alibaba responds, yeah, I'm determined, I know I was weak. Basically, they have a very heartfelt conversation. And Alibaba kind of says, no, you, to everything Judal says, calling him naive. Now, Judal is attacked by another monster, and Alibaba saves him again, and he realizes, damn, I hate to admit it, but he's strong right now. He's a lot stronger than me, so I need to be with him to protect me. And they can still use the staff that Judal has to fly around, but obviously it's tough because he's got a limited amount of magic. So that they are flying, and Alibaba says they need to return there quickly because of something. And it's kind of cut off there. That's what happens there. They kind of like eat dinner together and they do all this stuff there. I guess they eventually, they must have formed a relationship together, being there for 2 years. In the final arc, when he returns, he just tells Yunnan, oh, I'm not going to wait for Aladdin. But that sounded weird. I'm not going to wait for Alibaba to rehabilitate, and he just goes off to find Kuryu, which Yunnan says is pretty cruel, but he doesn't really care, because I guess he's used to it, being alive for 9 lives. He also, messes around a bit in the Rem Empire with that Nerva king, the rebellion king. He does go back to Kou Empire and he meets with Kuryu and Alibaba's there and Morgiana. And Alibaba actually asks him, are you going to cause any more wars? And he says no. He has a bit of banter with Kyoku, calling her grandma, makes fun of Morgiana's handwriting, so he seems pretty chill, to be honest. Kuryu states that they're going to visit Judal's old hometown where he was born. And he's actually going to reveal his real name, which I guess we never found out. Kuryu is going to reveal it, and Judal shuts him up, unfortunately, so we never get to find that out. Now, in the final arc, which I'm already talking about, Sinbad rewrites everyone raw, but he can't rewrite Alibaba, Aladdin, Hakuryu, and Judal, so Hakuryu and Judal join Alibaba and Aladdin to stop Sinbad, kind of change everything, and he also recommends Nerva to join them, because he's not affected by the rewritten Raw. Now, the very final thing we see is I think it's actually the second last page of the whole thing. Remember that creature that chases him in the final arc, when him and Alibaba on the Dark Continent? Well, now that the whole world has changed and people can go to the Dark Continent, Yunnan, as a joke, brings that creature and it chases around Judal again. And Alibaba, Morgiana, and Aladdin just laugh. And, it's kind of a banter thing. We also see in the final page that creature's friendly with them. So I guess that's that. I mean, we didn't really get anything of him, of what happened, what he's doing at the final arc after the world changed. And of course, when the final arc happened and the world changed, the Magi system was lost, and Metal Vessels, so I guess he's not a Magi at the end. No one is. The Magi don't exist anymore. But he's still him, he's still chilling. And it's nice to see him still hanging out with everyone. And of course there's a kind of a joke scene when they're taking on the final villain. He's like, the Magi system's gonna disappear if we beat him. So, there's that, and he helps out taking out the final villain. So he does redeem himself and become a good character guy at the end. He has varying relationships with Hakuryu, he sees as a friend. With Kyogu, obviously he sees her as a friend. He sees Sinbad as a rival as well. Afterwards he doesn't see him like that, he kind of doesn't care, but that is how he sees Sinbad, kind of like a rival, someone fun to fight with. I guess his relationship with Aladdin is kind of like a true rivalry, since they both got strong at the same time and they grew kind of like parallels. Aladdin doesn't really hate him though, he just sees him as someone who is just depressed, and the reason he is who he is because of his upbringing, not because of his choice. And of course he finds Alibaba a bit weird and doesn't know why Aladdin chose him as a metal vessel user, That is kind of their relationship there. And of course, they had that whole 2 years at the Dark Continent. There's that as well. And he ditched him the moment he got back to the real world, which Yunnan says is cruel. Now talking about his abilities, he has several. Ice magic, a lot of named attacks, he has a lot of named lightning magic, he has gravity magic, wind, space-time magic, which is really cool, which he uses to teleport around. And of course, I would say the strongest technique, his isolation barrier, which creates like an area where no one is able to use Maho at all. Not even the Magi, and Metal Vessel users can't use their Djinn either. So, and this includes himself, of course. No one can do a thing. And this is kind of their ace in the hole, their trump card that they Trump is that how you say it? Their card, the ace in the hole card that they used to beat Adam, because without this they would not have beaten her. And in conclusion, I guess that's that. I talk about their character development after this for the Magi video essays, but I feel like I've already kind of discussed that throughout the whole plot and his personality. I feel like I really have already talked about how his character has developed. You know, from being kind of like an edgy guy to kind of being a good guy by the end. So I guess that's that. Next up on the Magi list, so Shiva, Yunnan, and Arba. I've done those three. Now I've done Judal. I'm not sure who's next. It might be Ugo, maybe Aladdin. I'm not really sure, but I guess that's to be decided later on, right? So yeah, that's all.